Get your ghetto ass out of the car before I drag you out myself. Officer Grant Holloway slammed his hand onto Naomi Cross's door frame, rocking the vehicle as his eyes stripped her down to a threat he'd already decided she was. His thumb hovered near his holster, relaxed and practiced, like muscle memory. Naomi's breath caught, but her hands stayed raised, fingers spread, shaking in the open air. "Don't make me work harder for this," he muttered. The order came. A sharp crack split the daylight, and Naomi collapsed onto the pavement as her phone kept recording. The street went silent, while Holloway remained unaware of what would soon be standing outside his door. Before continuing, comment where in the world you are watching from, and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you can't miss. The sun blazed overhead as Naomi Cross guided her silver Accord through the lunch-hour traffic. The elementary school's brick walls were just 10 minutes away, and she still had time to review her afternoon counseling sessions. "I'm telling you, Marisol, that fourth-grade class really opened up during circle time today," Naomi said, her voice carrying through the car's speakers. "Even Tommy shared about his dad's deployment." "That's amazing," Marisol Vega replied, her voice warm with pride. "Those kids trust you so much, Naomi. You have such a gift with them." Naomi smiled, checking her mirrors as she changed lanes. "They just need someone to listen. Speaking of which, did you get those incident reports I left on your desk? The ones about—" Red and blue lights suddenly flashed in her rearview mirror. A police cruiser had slipped behind her, its chrome grille filling her view. "Hold on, Marisol. I'm being pulled over." Naomi kept her voice steady as she signaled and pulled into the Shell station on the corner. The concrete was bright white under the midday sun, and customers pumping gas turned to watch. "Want me to stay on the line?" Marisol asked. "Yes, please." Naomi put the car in park, placing both hands visible on the steering wheel. Her heart beat faster, but her breathing remained controlled. Heavy boots crunched on pavement as Officer Grant Holloway approached her window. His face was already tight with tension, jaw clenched beneath his mirrored sunglasses. "License and registration," he barked before she could speak. "Step out of the vehicle." "Officer, my name is Naomi Cross. I work as a counselor at—" "I said, step out." His voice cracked like a whip. Naomi kept her movements slow and deliberate as she unbuckled her seatbelt. "I'm reaching for my purse now, sir." "Out! Now!" Holloway yanked the door open, grabbing her arm. "Officer, please! I'm complying." The purse slipped from her grasp as he dragged her from the car. Her phone clattered to the pavement, Marisol's voice still carrying through the speaker. "Naomi, what's happening?" Across the street, a yellow school bus had stopped at the red light. Young faces pressed against the windows, eyes wide and uncertain. Naomi saw them watching and fought to stay calm. "Sir, I'm a school counselor. Those are my students." "Hands where I can see them," Holloway shouted, though her palms were already raised. "Stop resisting." "I'm not resisting," Naomi said firmly, even as his grip bruised her arm. "My name is Naomi Cross. I work at—" Holloway shoved her shoulder hard, spinning her toward the cruiser. "I said stop resisting." "Officer, please, listen." Naomi stumbled as her heel caught the curb. She windmilled backward, trying to catch her balance. Holloway's face contorted. The morning sun caught his badge as his hand moved to his weapon. Time seemed to slow as Naomi saw the fear in his eyes transform into something darker, a rage that had been waiting for an excuse. The first shot cracked across the gas station lot. The second and third followed in rapid succession, drowning out the screams that erupted from witnesses. The school bus driver laid on his horn as children began to cry. Naomi fell. The concrete was hot against her cheek. Her vision swam, the world tilting sideways as panicked footsteps scattered in all directions. The gas station's security cameras stared down impassively, recording everything in merciless detail. Through the ringing in her ears, she could hear Marisol screaming her name through the fallen phone. The screen lit up with an incoming call. Elias's smiling photo appearing as it rang and rang. The sun continued to pour down, harsh and unforgiving, as Naomi lay motionless on the blood-stained pavement. Her outstretched hand cast no shadow in the blinding light of high noon. Around her, chaos erupted. A woman filming with her phone sobbed openly. The gas station attendant rushed out, first aid kit in hand, but stopped short at Holloway's raised palm. The school bus finally turned the corner, carrying away dozens of traumatized young witnesses. "Stay back! Everyone stay back!" Holloway's voice cracked as he kept his weapon drawn, though Naomi hadn't moved since the shots. His hand shook visibly now, sweat running down his temples. More sirens wailed in the distance. The gas station's security camera continued its methodical sweep, its red light blinking as it captured every detail. The growing pool of blood, the scattered contents of Naomi's purse, her phone still connecting her last moments to horrified listeners. The device buzzed again on the concrete, Elias's call going unanswered as his wife lay still under the merciless midday sun. The screen was cracked now, spiderwebbing across his face, but the phone kept ringing, desperate to make a connection that would never be completed. The gathering crowd pressed against the yellow caution tape that Holloway hastily strung up, their phones raised high to document the scene. The officer's commands grew more frantic as he tried to control the situation that had spiraled so violently beyond his grasp. But Naomi remained silent and unmoving, her professional attire now stained dark against the white concrete. The lunch-hour traffic continued to flow past the gas station, drivers slowing to stare at the tableau of tragedy illuminated by the stark midday light. And still her phone rang, Elias's name flashing repeatedly on the shattered screen. Each unanswered call a heartbeat marking time in a world that had irreversibly changed. Elias Cross heard the sirens before he saw the crowd. His heart pounded as he accelerated through yellow lights, weaving through traffic toward the Shell station. The mass of people grew visible, phones raised high, faces shocked and tearful. He abandoned his car half on the curb, shoving through the gathered onlookers. "That's my wife," he said, voice tight but controlled. "Let me through." The crowd parted. Time seemed to freeze as Elias took in the scene beneath the bright blue sky. Naomi lying motionless on the concrete, paramedics crouched over her still form, their movements already carrying the heavy resignation of futility. Her phone lay shattered nearby, his own missed calls still lighting up the cracked screen. "Sir, you need to stay back," an officer called out, reaching for Elias's shoulder. Elias didn't break stride. "That's my wife." His voice carried across the lot, steady despite the tremor in his hands. The paramedics glanced up as he approached. Their faces told him everything before they could speak. The slight head shake, the sympathetic grimace, the way they slowly sat back on their heels. One of them reached for a white sheet. "Time of death, 10:43 a.m., the paramedic said quietly. Near his cruiser, Officer Holloway was already spinning his story into his radio, voice pitched high with manufactured stress. Subject became combative, reached for my weapon, feared for my life. A local reporter, Hank Soder, pushed through the crowd with his camera rolling. His weathered face was grim as he captured the scene. The blood on the concrete, the scattered contents of Naomi's purse, the school bus tire marks still visible where it had pulled away. Across the street, a woman in workout clothes stood filming with trembling hands. Lila Benton, Elias recognized her from the neighborhood. Despite her obvious fear, she kept her phone steady, documenting everything. A police sergeant with sweat stains under his arms tried to wave phones down. "Everyone needs to stop recording and clear the area," he barked, moving toward Lila. Elias smoothly intercepted him, placing himself between the sergeant and Lila. He said nothing, but his posture spoke volumes, shoulders squared, feet planted, eyes locked on the sergeant's face. "Sir, step aside!" The sergeant grabbed Elias's arm roughly. In one fluid motion, Elias pivoted, breaking the grip with practiced precision. No punch thrown, no dramatic takedown, just a simple disarm that left the sergeant stumbling backward, face flushing red as the crowd murmured. Other officers tensed, hands moving to weapons. Elias remained perfectly still, his calm somehow more unsettling than any show of aggression. "Keep recording," he said quietly to Lila, who nodded, her phone still raised. Hank Soder moved closer, making sure to capture every detail. The morning heat was building, shimming off the pavement as Elias finally knelt beside his wife. He brushed a strand of hair from her face with infinite gentleness. "I'm here, love," he whispered, his composed expression cracking for just a moment. "I'm here." The crowd had grown larger now, spilling into the street. Cars slowed to witness the tableau. The grieving husband, the defensive officers, the dead woman on the ground beneath a merciless sun. Someone had placed flowers by the gas station door. A child's drawing of Naomi appeared, taped hastily to a light pole. Elias stood slowly, his movements deliberate. He turned to face the gathered cameras, his silence drawing everyone's attention. Officer Holloway had stopped mid-sentence in his radio call, watching with poorly concealed unease. The morning breeze carried distant traffic sounds and the soft sobs of witnesses. A plane passed overhead, its shadow briefly darkening the scene before the harsh sunlight returned in full force. When Elias finally spoke, his voice was clear and measured, carrying across the hushed crowd. "Tomorrow morning, this will be handled." The cameras kept rolling as he stood there, framed by the blue sky and the growing line of police vehicles. Behind him, paramedics finally covered Naomi with a white sheet, but not before Hank Soder captured one final shot of her face. Peaceful despite everything, still wearing the gentle expression that had made her such a beloved figure at the elementary school. Lila Benton's hands had stopped shaking as she continued to film. Other neighbors had joined her, forming a wall of witnesses with phones raised like shields against injustice. They captured every detail. The way Holloway couldn't meet anyone's eyes, the nervous shuffling of the other officers, the quiet dignity in Elias's stance. The gas station's security cameras whirred overhead, their unblinking lenses recording from multiple angles. News vans began arriving, reporters speaking urgently into microphones as they gestured at the growing memorial by the entrance. Through it all, Elias remained motionless, his shadow stretching across the concrete where his wife lay. The morning sun continued its climb toward noon, harsh and revealing, leaving no darkness for lies to hide in. Chief Dana Klein stood at the podium, her navy suit pressed and badge gleaming under the harsh fluorescent lights of City Hall's press room. Camera flashes punctuated the tense atmosphere as reporters jostled for position. In the front row, Elias Cross sat perfectly still, his presence drawing nervous glances from city officials. "At approximately 10:17 a.m. yesterday," Klein began, her voice practiced and controlled, "an incident occurred during a routine traffic stop resulting in the death of Naomi Cross. Officer Grant Holloway has been placed on administrative leave, pending a full investigation." Hank Soder's hand shot up immediately. "Chief Klein, multiple witnesses recorded Officer Holloway escalating the situation. Why hasn't he been charged?" Klein's jaw tightened. "This is a complex incident that requires careful review. We're gathering all available evidence, and—" "The evidence is already public," Soder interrupted, holding up his phone. "I have footage from 3 different angles showing an unarmed school counselor being shot in broad daylight." "Mr. Soder," Klein's voice hardened, "we understand the community's concerns, but we must follow proper procedures. From her position against the wall, Adia Renee Vargas shifted uncomfortably. She'd seen this dance before. The careful choice of words, the emphasis on procedure over justice, the slow burial of truth under bureaucratic quicksand. Her fingers tapped against her leather portfolio, mind already racing through the familiar pattern. "What about the children on the school bus?" another reporter called out. "Have their statements been taken?" "We're not discussing witness statements at this time," Klein deflected. "What I can say is that Officer Holloway has served this department for 15 years with distinction." Elias's expression didn't change, but his knuckles whitened where they gripped his knees. Around him, the press room grew louder, questions overlapping. Was Officer Holloway wearing a body camera? Why was Mrs. Cross pulled over in the first place? Are there previous complaints against this officer? Through the room's windows, sunlight caught the edges of protest signs gathering in the plaza below. Justice for Naomi competed with Black Lives Matter and No More Killer Cops as the crowd continued to grow. Klein raised her hands. "We'll have another briefing when more information becomes available. Thank you for your time." As reporters shouted follow-up questions, Elias stood smoothly and walked out. In the courthouse plaza, he found Marisol Vega waiting, her eyes red-rimmed but determined. She clutched her phone like a lifeline. "Mr. Cross," she said, voice barely steady. "I have something you need to hear." They found a quiet corner near the plaza's central fountain. Water sparkled in the midday sun as Marisol pulled up the audio file. "I was still on the call when—" She swallowed hard. "When everything happened. The phone didn't disconnect right away." She pressed play. Naomi's calm voice came through first. "Officer, I'm keeping my hands visible. I'm a school counselor at—" "Out of the vehicle, now!" Holloway's voice cracked with aggression. "I'm complying, sir. I'm moving slowly." A sudden commotion, the sound of a body being shoved. "I said now!" "Please, my hands are up." "Stop resisting!" "I'm not resist." 3 shots rang out, followed by screams and chaos. Marisol's hands shook as she stopped the recording. "She wasn't. She never—" She couldn't finish. "Thank you," Elias said quietly. "Can you send that to me?" She nodded, wiping her eyes. "I already gave a copy to that reporter, Hank Soder, and I uploaded it to—" "Good." Elias cut her off gently. "The more copies out there, the better." He pulled out his phone, fingers moving with purpose. A single text. Lieutenant Malik read. Then he turned to Marisol. "You should go home. Take care of yourself. What happens next? You don't need to see it." The drive home felt surreal. Suburban streets rolled past, children playing in yards, mail carriers making their rounds, normal life continuing while his had shattered. Elias parked in his driveway, staring at Naomi's car still sitting where she'd left it yesterday morning. Inside, her presence was everywhere. Half-finished tea on the counter, lesson plans spread across the dining room table, her reading glasses perched on top of a stack of student files. Her work bag sat by the door where police had dropped it after collecting her personal effects. Elias picked up the bag, his movements careful as he opened the main compartment. Among scattered papers and office supplies, a sealed manila envelope caught his eye. Written in Naomi's neat handwriting, "If anything happens, do not trust City Hall." His hands were steady as he broke the seal. Inside, he found carefully organized documents, property maps of predominantly black neighborhoods, lists of names and dates, financial records showing a pattern of targeted foreclosures, and paper clipped to the front, a single sheet with one word written in bold. Retaliation. The sun streamed through the kitchen window, illuminating the spread of documents on the counter. In the distance, a police siren wailed, but Elias didn't look up. He was already memorizing names, connecting dots, seeing the bigger picture his wife had uncovered. and died for. Outside, the afternoon light began to soften, but the truth in his hands remained sharp and clear as broken glass. A neighbor's wind chimes tinkled in the breeze, an incongruously peaceful sound in a world that had lost its center. Elias continued reading, his shadow falling across page after page of evidence that would soon shatter more than just his own life. Sunlight flooded Veterans Memorial Park at 2 p.m., casting short shadows beneath the oak trees lining the main path. Children laughed on the playground while parents watched from nearby benches. Joggers circled the walking track, and a youth baseball team practiced in the distance. Elias Cross sat at a wooden picnic table, his back straight, hands folded on top of Naomi's manila envelope. 3 men approached from different directions, casual clothes, relaxed postures, but moving with unmistakable purpose. Lieutenant Malik Red reached him first, wearing jeans and a plain blue polo shirt that did nothing to hide his military bearing. "Mr. Cross," Malik said quietly, extending his hand. Elias stood, greeting him with a firm handshake. "Thank you for coming, Lieutenant." The other 2 men, Marcus Thompson and David Rivera, positioned themselves naturally at adjacent tables, appearing to enjoy the afternoon while maintaining clear sightlines across the park. "Let's sit," Malik suggested, his voice low and steady. "Tell me what you found." Elias opened the envelope, spreading documents across the sun-warmed wood. Property maps formed a pattern across predominantly black neighborhoods, with red circles marking homes already seized and yellow highlighting upcoming targets. "Naomi discovered this while counseling students," Elias explained, pointing to specific addresses. "Kids suddenly moving, families losing generations-old homes to mysterious code violations or tax disputes." She started connecting dots. Malik studied the maps, his expression hardening. "Pressure tactics, create violations, force sales below market, flip the properties through shell companies." He touched one of the red circles. "I know this block. 3 families gone in 2 months. Accidents and arrests until they sold." "She was building a case," Elias continued, sliding over a list of names and dates. "City officials, shell company directors, officers involved in targeted arrests. She had a meeting scheduled next week with federal housing authorities." "Which is why they couldn't let her make it," Malik finished, jaw tight. A frisbee sailed past their table. A golden retriever bounded after it, followed by laughing children. The normal scene felt surreal against their conversation's weight. "Holloway wasn't scared during that stop," Elias said, his controlled tone masking fury. "He was cleaning up loose ends, making sure she couldn't testify." Malik nodded slowly, scanning the documents again. "What's your play?" "Not vengeance," Elias replied. "Containment. We put Holloway under constant observation, legal observation, from public spaces. No shadows, no threats, just unmistakable presence in broad daylight. He can't run, can't destroy evidence, can't disappear quietly while the system protects him." "They'll fight back," Malik warned. "Not directly at first. They'll send provocateurs, try to trigger a response they can use to justify force. 1 punch thrown, 1 weapon spotted. That's all they need to turn it into a bloodbath. Which is why we need absolute discipline," Elias said. "No first strikes, no hidden weapons, no masks or tactical gear, just positioning and presence." Malik gestured to Thompson and Rivera, who smoothly joined them at the table. "Show me what you're thinking." For the next 2 hours, they built their plan in plain sight. Malik sketched layout diagrams while Thompson, a former urban warfare specialist, identified key control points. Rivera, who'd run protective operations in civilian zones, mapped camera angles and witness positions. "We'll need 4-person teams here, here, and here," Malik indicated, marking intersection points. "Public sidewalks only. maintaining clear foot traffic paths. 3 observation posts with rotating positions so no one stands too long. Local news vans will set up on the north side, Rivera added. We position our most visible teams in their sight lines. Let them document everything. Live stream protocols, Thompson suggested. Multiple feeds, different platforms. If something happens, it happens in front of everyone. A teenager practicing skateboard tricks rolled past their table. A mom pushed a stroller along the path. The afternoon continued its peaceful rhythm as they planned their daylight siege. What about when night falls? Rivera asked. We don't need night, Elias replied. Everything happens in full sun. The darkness belongs to them. We take the day. Malik studied the final diagram. 30 operators minimum. 3 shifts, 10 per team. I can have them here by dawn. He looked at Elias. You understand there's no going back from this? Once we move, everything changes. Everything already changed, Elias said simply. Now we just make sure everyone sees it. They spent another hour refining details. Emergency response protocols, media interaction guidelines, contingency routes. Every movement would be recorded, every position documented, every action witnessed by dozens of cameras and hundreds of eyes. One final thing, Malik said as they prepared to leave. When this starts, stay centered, stay visible. Let them see the calm in your eyes while their world spins apart. Elias nodded, gathering Naomi's documents. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows now, but tomorrow would bring new light. Malik pulled out his phone and sent a single message to a secure group. 11 a.m. tomorrow. Full visibility. The children's laughter from the playground carried across the park. A pickup baseball game was starting on the field. Parents called their kids home for dinner. The world spun on, unaware that tomorrow would change everything. The morning sun climbed steadily over Cedar Grove, casting crisp shadows across manicured lawns and freshly washed cars. At 10:45 a.m., Elias Cross stood motionless on the sidewalk, his presence drawing curious glances from early risers walking their dogs. Officer Grant Holloway's 2-story colonial loomed ahead, a temple of suburban security now transformed into a fortress of fear. The curtains twitched regularly, betraying the nervous movements inside. The street held its breath, temperature rising degree by degree as the morning aged toward noon. A paperboy finished his route. A mail carrier methodically worked his way down the opposite side, pretending not to notice the tension building like summer heat. At 10:52, the first pair arrived, Isaiah Cole and Marcus Thompson, wearing polo shirts and pressed khakis, moving with the fluid grace of apex predators dressed as accountants. They took positions 2 houses apart, their stance casual but precise. 3 minutes later, Devon Price and James Wilson appeared from different directions, claiming their own sections of public sidewalk. More pairs materialized every few minutes, some walking, others parking cars blocks away and strolling in. Each man positioned himself with mathematical precision, creating an invisible web of overlapping fields of view. No dramatic gestures, no tactical gear, just quiet competence and unshakable focus. Neighbors emerged onto porches and driveways, phones raised. Lila Benton's hands trembled slightly as she started her live stream from her front steps, but her voice remained steady. They're arriving in pairs. No weapons visible, just standing, watching. Must be 20 or 30 of them now. By 10:58, Malik Red appeared beside Elias. Perimeters set, he murmured. All approaches covered. Response teams in position. Inside Holloway's house, shadows shifted behind blinds. A face appeared briefly in an upstairs window. Holloway himself, complexion ashen despite the warming day. He vanished quickly, but his agitation was visible even through the glass. The distinctive rumble of a news van announced Hank Soder's arrival. The veteran reporter emerged with his cameraman, immediately grasping the story's visual power. 30 black men in civilian clothes, arranged in a living geometry of contained power, surrounding a police officer's house in broad daylight. "This is Hank Soder, reporting live," he began, camera rolling. "We're on Cedar Grove, where an extraordinary scene is unfolding." More media vehicles appeared, drawn by scanner chatter and social media buzz. Drone cameras buzzed overhead, capturing the perfect symmetry of the formation from above. At 11:07, the first patrol cars arrived, cautious, lights off. The officers emerged slowly, hands conspicuously away from weapons. They recognized what they were seeing. Military discipline wrapped in civilian clothes, precise positioning that spoke of years of specialized training. "Sir," a young officer approached Elias, voice uncertain. "We've received complaints about—" "Public sidewalk," Elias interrupted calmly. "No laws being broken, no threats being made. We're simply ensuring Officer Holloway remains visible to the public." The officer retreated, conferring with his colleagues in hushed tones. More police arrived, forming their own perimeter outside the SEAL's position. The tension ratcheted higher under the climbing sun. At 11:23, the first attempt at provocation came. Trent Malloy, off-duty, red-faced, and spoiling for a fight, shouldered through the gathering crowd. He made straight for Devon Price, who stood like a statue on the corner. "You can't do this!" Malloy shouted, closing fast. "This is harassment! This is—" He shoved Devon's shoulder hard, trying to trigger a response. Devon moved like water. A subtle shift of weight, a precise grip, a controlled redirection of momentum. Suddenly, Malloy was airborne, then flat on his back on the sun-heated pavement. Devon had his arm locked and immobilized before the first gasp from the crowd. "Please don't touch me again," Devon said quietly, releasing the hold and stepping back to his original position. The entire interaction took less than 3 seconds. Dozens of phones captured the moment. Malloy scrambled up, face burning with humiliation, but 2 other officers pulled him away before he could escalate further. The message was clear. Violence would be met with precise, overwhelming skill, then immediately released. No escalation, no revenge, just clinical demonstration of complete control. By 11:45, the scene had crystallized into its final form. 30 black men in business casual attire, arranged in a perfect containment pattern. Police maintaining their own uncertain perimeter. Media cameras documenting every angle. Neighbors streaming every moment. And at the center, Holloway's house, a prison built of visibility and shame. The sun reached its highest point, eliminating shadows, bathing everything in revealing light. Elias stepped forward, his voice carrying clearly across the suddenly hushed street. "Officer Holloway, you're not leaving this street unseen." The words hung in the hot air, a promise and a sentence. Behind the curtains, Holloway's shadow paced like a caged animal, discovered and exposed in the unforgiving day. Inside his tactical vest, Hank's phone buzzed with messages from his station manager. Ratings were spiking as live feeds spread across networks. Lila's live stream count topped 10,000 viewers. Police radios crackled with confused requests for guidance from headquarters. The siege had begun, not with violence or threats, but with the simple power of being seen. Every minute would be recorded, every action witnessed, every attempt at concealment foiled by the relentless sun and unwavering eyes of the world. The midday sun beat down mercilessly on Cedar Grove as more police vehicles rolled in, their tires crunching slowly over the sun-baked asphalt. Elias Cross stood immobile beside Lantern Malik Red, watching heat waves distort the air above the pavement. Sweat beaded on foreheads, but none of the SEALs moved to wipe it away. Police cruisers now blocked both ends of the street, their presence growing from cautious observation to show of force. Officers stepped out with practiced synchronization, adjusting tactical gear and exchanging meaningful glances. "Here comes the circus," Malik muttered, noting 3 black SUVs approaching with official plates. Chief Dana Klein emerged from the lead vehicle, her pressed uniform and camera-ready smile a stark contrast to the tension saturating the street. She paused to wave at news cameras, then huddled with her command staff, speaking in hushed tones while pointing at various positions around the perimeter. "Looking for weak spots," Elias observed quietly. "They'll test us first." As if on cue, officers began probing the SEALs' formation. They moved in pairs, shoulders brushing past the stationed men, muttering under their breath. "Better watch your back, hero," one whispered to Isaiah Cole, bumping him harder than necessary. Isaiah didn't flinch. His eyes remained fixed ahead, posture relaxed but ready. "You boys picked the wrong neighborhood," another officer growled, stepping deliberately into Devon Price's personal space. Devon shifted his weight almost imperceptibly, preparing for anything while maintaining his disciplined non-engagement. Behind his window blinds, Officer Holloway's silhouette paced back and forth, his phone pressed to his ear, gesturing animatedly as he made call after call. His confidence was visible even through the glass, the smug assurance of a man certain the system would protect him. "Mr. Cross." The voice came low and urgent from behind. ADA Renee Vargas approached carefully, trying to appear casual despite her obvious concern. Her business suit looked out of place among the tactical gear and polo shirts. "We need to talk." Elias turned slightly, acknowledging her presence while maintaining his view of the scene. "Here to shut us down, Ms. Vargas?" "I'm here to warn you," she murmured, keeping her voice below the growing crowd noise. "They're preparing to classify your group as an armed civilian threat. The paperwork's already moving. Even though we're unarmed and on public property? Facts don't matter right now. They need a pretext." She glanced nervously at the gathering police force. "Once that classification goes through, they'll have authorization for full tactical response." Elias nodded once, unsurprised. "Thank you for the warning." Malik caught the exchange and made a subtle hand gesture. Around the perimeter, the SEALs adjusted their stance, shifting from parade rest to a looser, more prepared posture. To untrained eyes, nothing had changed. But now every man was positioned to react instantly if needed. The crowd lining the streets had doubled in the last hour. Teenagers perched in trees with phones raised high. Parents held children back on porches. News vans clogged the adjacent blocks, their satellite dishes reaching skyward like metal flowers searching for sun. Above it all, camera drones buzzed in holding patterns, documenting every movement. The air felt electric, charged with competing frequencies, police radios crackling with coded messages, news reporters doing live stand-ups, social media streams broadcasting every angle. The heat only added to the tension, turning the peaceful suburban street into a pressure cooker of competing forces. Chief Klein's smile had hardened as she received updates through her earpiece. Her commands became sharper, more urgent. Officers began donning riot gear, the sound of Velcro and clicking plastic adding to the growing symphony of confrontation. "They're choosing force," Malik observed quietly. "They always do," Elias replied. "It's easier than truth." More vehicles arrived, larger ones with tinted windows and reinforced bumpers. SWAT team members emerged, checking weapons and adjusting body armor. The message was clear: submit or be subdued. The crowd sensed the shift. Phones rose higher, live streams multiplied. Hank Soder's voice carried across the murmurs. Police appear to be escalating their presence, though the protesters remain completely non-violent. Through it all, The SEALs maintained their positions. No weapons, no threats, no aggression, just unwavering presence and precise positioning. Their discipline seemed to magnify the increasingly aggressive police response, making it look more like panic than power. Lila Benton's live stream captured a police commander asking, "Sir, are you sure about this? They haven't done anything illegal." "Follow orders," came the curt response. The temperature peaked as noon approached. Heat rippled off car hoods and tactical vehicles. Sweat darkened uniforms and civilian clothes alike. The atmosphere grew thick with anticipation, like the moment before a thunderstorm breaks. A police captain emerged from conference with Chief Klein. His face was set with grim determination as he surveyed the scene one final time. Behind him, riot units began moving into formation, shields locked, batons ready. The captain raised his hand, held it for a moment in the shimmering air, then gave a single, sharp nod. The riot units began to advance. The wall of riot shields advanced in lockstep, blue uniforms pressing forward beneath the merciless sun. "Disperse immediately!" one officer shouted. "Stay where you are!" yelled another. "On the ground!" screamed a third. The contradicting orders echoed across Cedar Grove, creating a deliberate cacophony of confusion. Elias recognized the tactic: create chaos, force mistakes, manufacture an excuse. The SEALs remained motionless as the line approached, their discipline a stark contrast to the aggressive advance. "Final warning!" Chief Klein's voice crackled through a megaphone. "Clear the area or face arrest." The riot line surged forward suddenly. A shield slammed into Devon Price's chest, driving him back a step. He absorbed the impact, hands still loose at his sides, face unchanged. The officer behind the shield cursed in frustration at Devon's lack of reaction. Isaiah Cole's controlled breathing didn't even falter when a baton caught him across the ribs. The striker was clumsy, telegraphing his move with tensed shoulders and shifted weight. Isaiah could have blocked it, countered it, ended it, but he took the hit instead, letting the cameras capture everything. "They're assaulting officers!" someone shouted, though every phone and news camera showed the opposite. The lie was desperate, transparent in the stark daylight. Lila Benton's live stream captured it all. The men in civilian clothes aren't fighting back. They're just standing there while police— Her voice cut off in a gasp as another baton swung. The SEALs held their position, their restraint making the police aggression look increasingly unhinged. Sweat ran down faces on both sides, but where the officers' expressions showed rage and fear, the SEALs remained impassive, controlled. "Move in!" Chief Klein ordered through the megaphone. "Take them down!" Her words were interrupted by running footsteps. Trent Malloy, still in civilian clothes from his earlier humiliation, charged through the police line straight at Elias. His face was twisted with fury, hands balled into fists, all pretense of procedure abandoned. But Malloy never reached his target. Winters. Malik Red stepped into his path with surgical precision, catching Malloy's wild rush with practiced ease. There was no dramatic collision, no theatrical display, just a redirect of momentum that sent Malloy face first into the sun-baked pavement with bone-jarring force. The impact seemed to snap something in the police line. An officer near the back raised his taser, hands shaking. The probes fired wide, missing his target entirely and striking a parked car. The electrical discharge sparked against metal, and the car's alarm began wailing. The crowd's reaction was instant. Screams erupted as people scrambled backward. Camera phones wobbled, their footage jerking wildly. Parents grabbed children off porches, dragging them inside. News crews pushed closer, fighting for better angles. "They're armed!" someone yelled from the police line, though not a single SEAL had drawn a weapon or raised a fist. Another taser fired, Then another. Probes crossed in the air like deadly threads weaving chaos. A bystander fell, caught by stray voltage. More screams, more alarms, more lies dying in the sunlight. Through it all, Elias stood unmoved, watching as the last threads of official fiction unraveled. Every phone, every camera, every witness could see the truth, could see who was escalating and who was restraining, who was provoking and who was protecting. The SEALs' formation had shifted imperceptibly during the chaos, adjusting to protect the crowd while maintaining their discipline. No one had broken ranks. No one had thrown a punch. No one had given them the excuse they wanted. Then Officer Holloway's voice cut through the noise. "Just shoot the bastards!" He was leaning out his front door now, face red with rage and fear. "They're threatening officers! Use force!" Those words hung in the air for one heated heartbeat. Malik's eyes met Elias's. A decision crystallized between them. Not to start a riot, but to end this farce before someone died. Malik's command was short and sharp. Control and contain. The shift was instantaneous. One moment the SEALs were static targets. The next, they were liquid precision. An officer raised his baton high, telegraphing another wild strike. Isaiah Cole caught the arm mid-swing, twisted, and drove the man to his knees with clinical efficiency. Another officer lunged with his shield, trying to crush Devon Price against a cruiser. Devon slipped the attack like water, redirecting the shield's momentum until its wielder stumbled forward. The officer's feet left the ground for one weightless moment before gravity reasserted itself. The first officer hit the pavement hard, shield clattering away across sun-heated asphalt. The sound seemed to trigger something primal in the police line, a sudden realization that their authority was not absolute, their power not uncontested. The street erupted, batons swung, bodies moved. The carefully maintained order dissolved into desperate chaos. But this was no longer a riot. It was a lesson in the difference between violence and control, between force and skill, between authority and power. An officer threw a wild punch at Elias. Malik caught the fist almost gently, turned it just so, and let physics finish the lesson. The officer's own momentum carried him forward into a painful introduction to gravity. More officers fell, not from brutal strikes or excessive force, but from their own aggression turned against them. Each takedown was precise, controlled, and captured in high definition by dozens of cameras. There would be no ambiguity, no room for creative reports, no way to hide what was happening in the bright light of day. "Stop!" Chief Klein's voice cracked over the megaphone. "Everyone, stop!" But momentum had taken over, and the street had become a stage where every lie would be exposed, every abuse of power answered, all under the unforgiving eye of the midday sun. The street erupted into controlled chaos as the SEALs moved with practiced efficiency. No hesitation, no wasted motion, just the fluid coordination of men who had trained together for years. They split into pairs automatically, each team moving as a single unit. Devon Price locked eyes with his partner as three officers charged their position. The first officer swung his baton in a wild arc. Devon stepped inside the strike, letting the weapon pass harmlessly overhead, while his partner slipped behind the attacker. In one smooth motion, Devon trapped the officer's arm and redirected his momentum. The man's feet left the ground, and he slammed hard into a parked cruiser, the impact echoing down the street. "Get them!" Chief Klein's voice crackled through the megaphone, but her commands were drowned out by the sounds of combat. Isaiah Cole moved like water through the melee, his movements precise and economical. An officer lunged at him with a shield. Isaiah sidestepped and drove his knee into the man's thigh. As the officer stumbled, Isaiah's elbow found the pressure point beneath his arm. The shield clattered to the ground. Before it settled, 2 more officers rushed him from different angles. Isaiah didn't break stride. He pivoted, using the first attacker's momentum to send him sprawling into the second. As the 3rd officer reached for his taser, Isaiah swept his legs out from under him. All 3 hit the pavement in rapid succession, controlled, deliberate takedowns that looked almost gentle on camera, but left the officers unable to continue. "They're resisting!" someone shouted, though the footage streaming live told a different story. Every phone captured the truth, trained professionals responding to aggression with measured control. The police line fractured as more officers fell. Their formation, built on intimidation rather than skill, couldn't maintain cohesion against opponents who understood the mechanics of real combat. Batons were caught mid-swing, twisted away, and tossed aside. Shields became hindrances rather than protection, as their wielders were guided into cars, trees, and light poles. A K-9 unit pushed forward through the chaos, the handler shouting commands as his German shepherd strained at the leash. "L'attentoti." Malik Red turned to face them, his expression calm. The handler released the dog with a sharp command, but Malik was already moving. He sidestepped the initial lunge, caught the trailing leash, and used it to control both animal and handler. The dog, responding to the confident authority in Malik's posture, backed down immediately. The handler found himself tangled in his own equipment, disarmed by his training tool. "Stand down!" Malik's voice cut through the noise. "No one needs to get hurt." But the police were beyond listening. Another wave pushed forward, desperately trying to regain control of a situation that had slipped beyond their understanding. They were used to force establishing authority. But here, force was being answered with expertise, aggression with technique. Devon Price intercepted an officer attempting to flank their position. The man telegraphed his attack with tensed shoulders and shifted weight. Rookie mistakes that spoke of minimal hand-to-hand training. Devon caught the punch easily, turned his hip, and let physics do the work. The officer sailed past him and met the brick mailbox with enough force to crack its mortar. He slumped to the ground, conscious but thoroughly subdued. "Get the cameras back," Chief Klein ordered, finally recognizing the public relations disaster unfolding in high definition. But it was too late. Every moment was being broadcast live, every takedown shared across social media. There would be no spinning this, no creative report writing, no convenient equipment malfunctions. Isaiah Cole demonstrated the gap in training levels as 3 more officers rushed him. The first reached for his collar. Isaiah trapped the hand and redirected it downward, using the officer's own grip to control his descent. The second threw a wild haymaker that Isaiah slipped easily, guiding the punch's momentum into a painful meeting with the pavement. The 3rd officer managed to land a glancing blow with his baton, but Isaiah absorbed the impact, stepped inside the officer's guard, and executed a textbook hip throw that left the man gasping for air on the sun-heated asphalt. Equipment littered the street, dropped batons, scattered shields, dislodged body cameras. Each piece told its own story of inadequate training meeting superior skill. The SEALs moved through the chaos like sharks through water, efficient and controlled, while the police struggled to maintain any semblance of coordination. Sirens wailed as more units approached, but the damage was done. The myth of overwhelming force had been shattered in broad daylight. Officers who had relied on weapons and numbers found themselves systematically disabled by bare hands and superior technique. Those who had hidden behind badges and authority were being exposed by men who understood real combat. "Regroup! Regroup!" The command echoed as riot police pulled back, trying to reform their lines. They moved uncertainly now, their earlier confidence replaced by a new awareness of their vulnerabilities. Shields were held closer, batons gripped tighter, eyes darting between opponents who had dismantled their entire tactical approach without throwing a single punch. The SEALs maintained their formation, still moving in coordinated pairs, still protecting the crowd of witnesses. They hadn't chased fleeing officers or pressed their advantage. They had simply demonstrated the difference between authority and capability, between force and control. The riot police gathered near their vehicles, shouting commands and trying to reorganize. But the damage was done. The street was littered with the evidence of their failure, and every second was still being broadcast to the world. The riot police regrouped, their line reforming with a wall of shields and raised pepper spray canisters. They advanced with heavy steps, boots scraping against asphalt, confident that superior numbers would finally overwhelm their opponents. The afternoon sun gleamed off their face shields as they moved forward in formation. "Gas them!" an officer shouted. "Push through!" But the SEALs had already adapted. They split into smaller units, using parked cars and concrete barriers as cover. Isaiah Cole pulled 2 civilians behind a pickup truck, just as the first spray arced through the air. The irritant scattered in the breeze, missing its targets entirely. "Keep recording," Elias called to the crowd, his voice steady. "Don't stop filming." Devon Price guided his team between 2 SUVs, creating a narrow corridor that nullified the police shield's effectiveness. When 3 officers tried to push through the gap, they found themselves trapped. Their wide riot shields became liabilities in the tight space. Devon disarmed the first officer with a quick strike to the wrist, while his partner controlled the others with precise joint locks. "They're flanking!" someone shouted from the police line. But there was no flanking to be done. The SEALs had positioned themselves too carefully, using the street's geography against their attackers. Every advance was met with tactical retreats that drew officers into disadvantageous positions. Shields meant nothing when you couldn't swing them. Batons were useless without room to strike. 2 officers spotted Elias directing movements and charged toward him, thinking they'd found a weak point. The first reached for his pepper spray, but Malik Red appeared as if from nowhere. He caught the officer's arm and redirected it upward. The spray released harmlessly into the air, while Malik used the man's momentum to send him sprawling. The second officer swung his baton at Elias's head. Many in the crowd gasped, expecting violence, but Elias moved with fluid precision. He stepped inside the strike, his elbow connecting with the officer's ribs. In the same motion, he trapped the man's arm and pivoted. The officer's feet left the ground. His face met the curb with enough force to crack his face shield. "Jesus Christ," Hank Soder muttered from behind his camera. "They're not even trying to hurt them." He was right. The SEALs could have ended this brutally, but they maintained control. Each takedown was measured, each response proportional. They weren't fighting. They were teaching a lesson about the difference between authority and skill. Police radios crackled with increasingly desperate commands. Officers who had started the confrontation with swagger now moved uncertainly, aware that their usual tactics weren't working. A lieutenant tried to rally his men, pushing them forward with shields raised. "Take them down!" the lieutenant ordered. "Any means necessary. Make the arrests." Isaiah Cole met the advance head-on. He slipped between 2 shields, hooked his foot behind an officer's knee, and controlled his fall to the ground. As 2 more officers moved to help their colleague, Isaiah used their own shield wall against them. He guided one shield into another, creating a domino effect that sent 4 men stumbling. "Watch the crossfire," Malik called, as more pepper spray filled the air. But the SEALs were already moving. They flowed around the chemical agents like water around rocks, always maintaining their defensive positions while letting the police exhaust themselves. Years of training had taught them that patience was deadlier than aggression. Devon Price demonstrated this perfectly. When 3 officers rushed him simultaneously, he didn't counterattack. Instead, he redirected each charge, letting their own momentum carry them into painful meetings with vehicle doors and light poles. None of the takedowns looked violent on camera, just smooth transitions from attack to defeat. The crowd had grown larger, phones raised high to capture every moment. They witnessed police tactics crumbling against superior training and discipline. Each failed attack, each controlled takedown, streamed live across social media. There would be no official narrative to spin, no way to hide what was happening in the bright afternoon sun. A commander's voice boomed through a megaphone. "This is your final warning. Submit to arrest, or we will escalate force." That's when everything changed. Grant Holloway, who had been watching from behind his curtains, finally snapped. He threw open his front door and stormed onto his porch, face red with rage and fear. "What are you waiting for?" he screamed at the police line. "Finish it! That's what we do, right? Finish it!" The violence stopped as if someone had hit a pause button. SEALs froze mid-movement. Officers halted mid-step. Every camera, every phone, every news lens swiveled toward Holloway's porch. His words hung in the air, heavy with meaning and admission. "That's what we do," he repeated, his voice carrying clearly in the sudden silence. "We finish them." The crowd drew a collective breath. Police radios went quiet. Even the news helicopters seemed to hover more softly. Holloway stood on his porch, authority radiating from his stance, rage twisting his features, and every second was being captured in high definition. All eyes fixed on him, the man who had killed Naomi Cross, now revealing his true nature in the open. His words, his rage, his assumption of authority over life and death. Everything the SEALs had positioned themselves to expose was now walking straight into frame. The silence deepened as cameras zoomed in on Holloway's face. The truth didn't need interpretation. It didn't need explanation. It stood on that porch, shouting orders that revealed exactly who he was and what he believed. Holloway's face shifted from rage to realization. The cameras caught every micro-expression as it dawned on him what he'd just revealed. His authority, his assumed immunity, had betrayed him in one unguarded moment of fury. He stood frozen on his porch, mouth slightly open, as if trying to snatch his words back from the air. Ada Renee Vargas emerged from the crowd, her professional demeanor a stark contrast to the chaos around her. In her raised hand, her phone displayed Marisol Vega's recording from Naomi's final moments. She positioned herself where both feeds could capture her voice clearly. "Play them side by side," she called to the news crews. "Today and yesterday. Let everyone hear the same man, the same voice, the same intent." The recordings began to circulate instantly. On one, Holloway's voice barked impossible commands at Naomi, followed by the sounds of aggression and gunshots. On the other, his fresh outburst rang with the same entitled rage, the same assumption of deadly power. The juxtaposition needed no commentary. "Naomi!" someone in the crowd called out. Others took up the name, building into a rhythmic chant that echoed off the suburban houses. "Naomi! Naomi!" Police commanders huddled near their vehicles, radioing frantically for guidance. Their careful choreography of provocations and responses had backfired. Instead of the SEALs appearing as aggressors, Holloway himself had painted the true picture, one of institutional arrogance and casual violence. Chief Dana Klein arrived, her face tight with controlled panic. She whispered urgently to her command staff while glancing at the media presence. The headlines were already writing themselves, and none of them would follow her preferred narrative. "Officer Holloway," she called out, her voice carrying professional concern, "please step inside. We need to secure your safety." But Holloway didn't move. He stood paralyzed by the weight of exposure, his swagger replaced by visible fear. Two sergeants approached him, their movements careful under the scrutiny of dozens of lenses. "Come on, Grant," one muttered. Don't make this worse." They took his arms, guiding him down the porch steps with firm grips that looked protective but felt punitive. Holloway stumbled slightly, his trained intimidation crumbling as handcuffs clicked around his wrists. "This is for your protection," Chief Klein announced to the cameras. "Given the volatile situation." "Given the truth," someone shouted, cutting through her practiced speech. Elias watched the performance with cold understanding. He'd seen this dance before. The show of action, the pretense of accountability, all carefully staged to diffuse public anger without creating actual change. He caught Malik's eye and gave a slight nod. The SEALs maintained their positions, unmoved by the theater before them. "Clear the area!" Orders began flowing through police radios. "Push back the crowd! Secure a perimeter!" Officers who had been humbled minutes before found new confidence, forming lines to push back observers. News crews were directed to safe distances. Phones were blocked by raised shields. The containment wasn't just physical, it was informational. Within 2 hours, Holloway sat in an air-conditioned office while investigators reviewed the situation. By 3 hours, terms like context and prior service entered the official statements. 4 hours brought the first mentions of procedural concerns about the evidence against him. Elias received word through Renee Vargas. A sealed indictment was being prepared, not against Holloway, but against him. The charges would include coordinating civil unrest and inciting violence against law enforcement. The SEALs would be named as co-conspirators unless they dispersed immediately. The afternoon sun began to soften as police systematically cleared the streets. Neighbors were encouraged to return to their homes. Media vehicles received parking citations that required immediate relocation. The crowd that had witnessed everything was slowly dispersed, pushed back block by block until only a core group of observers remained. Just before sunset, Holloway emerged from the police station. His smirk had returned, along with his badge and gun. He stood on the steps, deliberately visible, straightening his uniform while cameras caught his triumphant return to duty. "The matter has been thoroughly reviewed," Chief Klein announced, standing beside him. "Officer Holloway has been cleared of any procedural violations." The ride back to his house was a procession of patrol cars, lights flashing to clear his path. He stepped onto his porch once more, the same spot where he'd exposed himself hours earlier. But now his confidence was restored. The system had protected him, just as it always had. Elias stood with Malik and the remaining SEALs, watching Holloway's performance from their legal observation distance. The afternoon's victory had dissolved into familiar institutional deflection. Evidence would be questioned. Witnesses would be pressured. The machinery of protection was already grinding into motion. "They're going to come for you next," Malik said quietly. Elias nodded, his expression unchanged. The driveway where Holloway now parked was the same one he'd been so desperate to defend that morning. The porch, where he now stood triumphant, was the same one where he'd revealed his true nature. Every detail, every location, every player was exactly where they needed to be. Holloway raised his hand in a mocking wave to the few remaining observers. He made a show of unlocking his door, of claiming his territory again. His body language broadcast victory, dominance, and the unshakable confidence of a man certain the system would always take his side. The sun touched the horizon, painting the street in deep orange as Holloway disappeared inside his house. He had survived the day. He had weathered the exposure. He was free, untouched, and certain of his invulnerability. The battle, it seemed, had ended exactly as such battles always did, with authority protecting its own. After Holloway's triumphant return, police began systematically clearing the neighborhood. Officers moved door to door, suggesting residents return inside. News vans received citations requiring immediate relocation. The crowd that had witnessed everything slowly dispersed under the methodical pressure of authority reasserting control. Elias Cross walked away from Holloway's house with deliberate calm. Lieutenant Malik read beside him. Their controlled exit confused the remaining cameras. This wasn't the desperate retreat they'd expected from defeated men. Devon Price and Isaiah Cole fell in step behind them, their disciplined posture unchanged despite the day's brutality. Other team members peeled away in pairs, maintaining the appearance of orderly dispersal. "They're watching every move," Malik said quietly as they rounded a corner, "expecting us to run or fight back." "Let them watch," Elias replied. "They're looking for the wrong signals." The team regrouped at the Riverside Community Center, a busy hub of after-school programs and neighborhood meetings. The choice was intentional. No backrooms, no shadows, just open spaces filled with ordinary activity. Parents picked up children from basketball practice, while senior citizens played cards at corner tables. The seals spread out naturally, blending with the flow of community life. In the main hall, Elias unfolded Naomi's laptop on a central table. His fingers moved with practiced precision, navigating through layers of security she'd built, knowing this day might come. Malik leaned in, studying the screen as folders began unlocking. "Naomi built a dead man switch," Elias explained, his voice steady. "Everything she uncovered, property records, banking data, witness statements, all tied to public timestamps and metadata that can't be altered." Devon Price shifted closer, his tactical mind recognizing the strategy. The house confrontation wasn't about Holloway at all. It was about movement, Isaiah Cole added, understanding dawning in his eyes, forcing reactions. Elias nodded. Every time they responded, they left traces, phone signals pinging towers, vehicles logged on traffic cameras, shell companies rushing transfers between accounts. Malik pulled out his phone, comparing notes they'd taken during the operation. "The plate numbers we logged matched these property holdings." He pointed to Naomi's documentation. "Same players, same patterns." A call came through on Elias's secure line. ADA Renee Vargas, her voice tense with controlled urgency. "The office is in chaos," she reported. "Subpoenas are hitting faster than legal can block them. Someone triggered automatic filing protocols in 3 different jurisdictions. The chief judge is demanding explanations for sealed records nobody knew existed." "Any attempt to stop it?" Elias asked. "They're trying, but the timestamps are already registered. Federal oversight kicks in if they interfere." Renee paused. "This is what she was building, isn't it? A failsafe they couldn't bury." "One last thing to verify," Elias said. "I'll call back." The team worked in focused silence, cross-referencing data points against their morning observations. Isaiah tracked vehicle movements while Devon mapped phone patterns. Malik coordinated with other teams, confirming positions and timestamps. Each piece clicked into place, building an unbreakable chain of evidence. "Timeline's solid," Isaiah reported. "Every movement matches the metadata." "Banking records are synced," Devon added. "Transfer patterns confirm the property scheme." Malik studied the completed framework. "They can't claim confusion or coincidence. The pattern's too clear." Elias opened one final screen, a simple verification prompt. Behind it lay everything Naomi had discovered. The targeted harassment of black homeowners, the coordinated pressure campaigns, the false arrests meant to force property sales. More importantly, it held proof of how her traffic stop connected to all of it. The community center hummed with normal activity around them. Children laughed in the gymnasium. A yoga class started in the adjacent room. The mundane rhythm of daily life continued, unaware that justice was about to emerge from their midst. Elias's finger hovered over the key. This was Naomi's final act of protection, not just for herself, but for every person the system had tried to silence. She'd built it carefully, patiently, knowing the truth would need more than one voice to break through. The team stood ready, each understanding their role in what would follow. They'd created the pressure that forced their opponents to move carelessly. Now those desperate actions would become evidence that couldn't be buried or denied. "For Naomi," Elias said quietly, and pressed, "Confirm." Across the city, servers began executing predetermined protocols. Court filing systems activated. Media outlets received encrypted data packages. Oversight committees found urgent flags in their workflows. The machinery of justice Naomi had prepared started turning, powered by the very bureaucracy that had failed her. The afternoon light slanted through the community center windows, painting patterns on the floor as Elias closed the laptop. Outside, children played basketball on sun-warmed concrete. Inside, a system of corruption began cracking under the weight of irrefutable truth. At 12 noon exactly, phones across the city lit up with synchronized alerts. The first wave hit news desks, urgent notifications about court filings and document releases. Within minutes, social media feeds exploded as people began processing the scope of what was emerging. Hank Soder sat in his news van, frantically scrolling through the flood of information pouring onto his screen. His hands shook as he realized what he was seeing. Property records revealed a systematic pattern of harassment targeting black homeowners. Internal emails documented coordinated pressure campaigns. Banking records showed suspicious payments flowing through shell companies tied to police union officials. "Get the camera rolling now," he barked to his crew. "We're going live in 3 minutes." In her living room, Lila Benton watched her own live stream footage from the morning appear on major news sites, now annotated with timestamps and official documentation. Her neighbors' statements had been transformed into formal affidavits, lending legal weight to what they'd witnessed. Her phone buzzed constantly with messages from others in the community, all sharing the same stunned reaction. The most damning evidence emerged in crystal-clear audio. Officer Grant Holloway's own voice, recorded during a private conversation at the police union office. "That counselor thinks she can testify? Let's see how cooperative she feels after a proper traffic stop." The timestamp matched perfectly with the day he killed Naomi. At City Hall, Chief Dana Klein was mid-press conference when the notifications began flooding phones in the room. She faltered mid-sentence as reporters' expressions changed, watching real-time as her authority crumbled. Sweat beaded on her forehead under the harsh camera lights. "Chief, can you comment on these documents showing your signature on false property seizure authorizations?" a reporter called out. These allegations are—" Klein stammered, her practiced deflections failing as more reporters joined in. "What about the audio of Officer Holloway discussing retaliation against Naomi Cross? Did you personally approve the use of riot tactics against peaceful observers this morning?" Klein's face went pale as she scanned her own phone, seeing the extent of exposure. Without finishing her statement, she stepped back from the podium. "I hereby tender my immediate resignation," she managed, before security hustled her away from the barrage of questions. In the federal building downtown, agents moved with urgent purpose. Teams deployed to multiple locations across the city: City Hall, the police union office, various precinct buildings. There was no need for stealth or darkness. They moved in broad daylight, badges visible, warrant documents held high for cameras to capture. Ada Renee Vargas stood in her office, phone pressed to her ear, as she coordinated with federal prosecutors. "The evidence chain is unbreakable," she explained. "Every document has multiple verification sources. We need to move on these indictments immediately." She paused, listening to the response. "Yes, I understand the implications. And yes, I'm requesting protective custody. The people we're about to charge have already demonstrated their willingness to use deadly force against witnesses. On major news networks, Hank Soder delivered breaking coverage from the scene at City Hall. "What we're seeing is unprecedented in scope," he reported, struggling to maintain professional composure. Documents reveal a years-long conspiracy targeting black property owners, using police harassment and false arrests to force sales at depressed prices. The killing of Naomi Cross appears directly linked to her planned testimony about this scheme. The footage from the morning's confrontation played beside him, now overlaid with timing data that proved police had deliberately provoked violence. Each aggressive move by officers matched time-stamped orders from command, revealing a calculated attempt to create justification for arrests. "Federal agents have already served warrants at multiple locations," Soder continued. "Sources indicate grand jury indictments are being unsealed against several high-ranking officials. The FBI has confirmed their public corruption unit is taking lead on the investigation." At the Riverside Community Center, Elias and his team watched the cascade of revelations on multiple screens. They remained calm, professional. This was the outcome they'd trained for, the justice Naomi had engineered. "Scanner traffic is shifting," Malik reported, listening to his earpiece. "Federal tactical units moving into position." Isaiah Cole checked his phone. "First wave of arrests confirmed at City Hall. They're taking the deputy chief and 3 commanders into custody. Union lawyers are scrambling," Devin Price added. "They just tried to file emergency injunctions in 3 courts. All denied within minutes." The community center's normal activity continued around them, a physical reminder that justice could emerge from ordinary spaces. The truth didn't require shadows or violence to prevail. Children still played basketball outside. Senior citizens still dealt cards at their regular tables. The mundane rhythm of daily life provided cover for the systematic dismantling of corruption. A new sound cut through the afternoon. Different sirens, different agencies, different authority. Federal vehicles moved with precision through city streets, their lights flashing in the bright sun. Local police units pulled aside, powerless to interfere as higher jurisdiction took control. Online, body camera footage from that morning began surfacing, showing officers receiving orders that directly contradicted their public statements. Radio transmissions proved coordination between Holloway and senior officials immediately after Naomi's killing. Each new piece of evidence reinforced the others, creating an interlocking wall of truth. The federal convoy turned onto Holloway's street, with deliberate purpose. Lights flashing against sun-bright windows. There would be no darkness to hide in, no shadows to enable denial. Justice was arriving in full daylight, where everyone could witness its execution. Grant Holloway emerged from his front door with the same smug confidence he'd shown earlier. His swagger lasted exactly 3 steps onto the porch before he registered the unfamiliar vehicles. These weren't city police cruisers with familiar markings. The badges catching sunlight weren't worn by officers he could intimidate or call for favors. "What is this?" he demanded, voice cracking as federal agents moved up his walkway with practiced efficiency. "Grant Holloway," the lead agent announced clearly, holding up credentials. "FBI, we have a federal warrant for your arrest on multiple charges, including civil rights violations, conspiracy, and witness intimidation resulting in death." Holloway's face twisted. "You can't! I have protection. I'm a decorated officer." "Not anymore," the agent replied simply, advancing up the steps. Holloway lunged sideways, trying to duck back inside. 2 agents caught him before he made it through the doorway. He thrashed, throwing an elbow that caught one agent in the chest. The response was immediate and overwhelming. 4 sets of hands drove him down, his cheeks scraping concrete as they secured his arms behind his back. Blood dripped bright red onto the sun-bleached sidewalk. Holloway writhed, but the agent's grip was implacable. Unlike the local police confrontation earlier, no crowd rushed forward to interfere. Neighbors watched silently from their porches. News cameras rolled from a respectful distance. This was pure procedure, the methodical application of federal authority. "You're making a mistake!" Holloway shouted as they hauled him upright. "I was following orders. Ask the chief. Ask the union." "They're being arrested, too," an agent informed him coldly. Across town, coordinated raids swept through offices and homes. The deputy police chief was led out of a country club lunch meeting in handcuffs. 3 commanders were taken into custody at the Union Hall. A prominent real estate developer who'd profited from the property scheme was arrested in front of his downtown high-rise. Les Titres. Malik Red's team maintained discreet observation positions, ensuring key witnesses reached protective custody safely. They watched Marisol Vega, still carrying Naomi's final phone call recording, escorted by federal marshals to give her official statement. Lila Benton and other neighborhood witnesses were similarly secured, their testimony now crucial evidence rather than ignored complaints. "Movement on your 3, Devin Price murmured into his radio, spotting a police union lawyer rushing toward the federal building with a stack of emergency motions. "Let him go," Malik replied. "His paperwork's already been rejected by 3 judges. He's just making his billable hours." The team maintained their vigilance. Even with federal authority taking control, they knew desperate people might still lash out. Their caution proved warranted when a figure suddenly broke from behind a parked car, charging toward Elias with rage-blind intensity. "This is all your fault!" the man screamed, a patrol officer who'd worked closely with Holloway for years. Devin Price moved like liquid lightning. He intercepted the attacker 3 steps from Elias, redirecting the man's momentum into a controlled takedown that ended with a precision arm lock. No punches thrown, no excessive force, just pure tactical efficiency that left the would-be assailant helpless on the pavement. Federal agents quickly took custody of the officer, adding another charge to the growing list. Devin resumed his position without comment, ever professional. The incident barely caused a ripple in the ongoing operation. Back at Holloway's house, agents conducted a thorough search as their suspect continued to unravel. His shouted claims of just following orders grew more specific and incriminating with each passing minute. Every word was recorded, every accusation noted for follow-up investigation. "The chief signed off on everything," he ranted as they guided him toward a waiting vehicle. "The union guaranteed protection. We had a system." News helicopters circled overhead, their cameras capturing his meltdown in high definition. Local stations had already begun breaking down his accusations into investigative segments, comparing them against the evidence Naomi had collected. "Ask about the Thompson property on Oak Street," Holloway screamed, seemingly unaware he was confessing to additional crimes. "Ask how many others got the same treatment as that counselor." The growing crowd maintained a strange silence, as if witnessing a solemn ceremony rather than an arrest. Parents held children close. Elderly residents who'd lived through decades of similar injustices wiped quiet tears. This wasn't celebration. It was something deeper, more cathartic. Holloway's legs finally gave out as they reached the federal vehicle. He sagged between 2 agents, the fight draining from him as reality set in. His badge and gun had already been seized as evidence. His uniform would soon be replaced by prison clothes. The system he'd trusted to protect him had crumbled in the harsh light of accountability. "Wait," he tried one last time, voice breaking. "I can give you names. I know who ordered the hit on—" An agent shut the car door, cutting off his desperate offer. The tinted windows hid him from public view, but his silhouette was still visible. Head bowed, shoulders slumped in defeat. Elias stood perfectly still as the convoy prepared to depart, his expression impossible to read. Years of strategic planning, months of gathering evidence, weeks of precise coordination, and days of tactical execution had led to this moment. Federal lights flashed against the houses, marking time until the vehicles pulled away. Holloway's voice could still be heard faintly through the window, growing more panicked as he realized this wasn't something he could talk his way out of. The convoy rolled forward with implacable purpose, taking him away from the neighborhood he'd terrorized, the badge he'd abused, and the impunity he'd relied on for so long. The intersection of Maple and 4th stood empty under the bright afternoon sun, orange cones directing traffic away from the small gathering. The same gas station where Naomi Cross had lost her life now served as a silent witness to a different kind of moment. Community members clustered together, their faces solemn but determined. Lila Benton stepped forward, gripping one edge of the cloth covering the memorial plaque. Her hands trembled slightly, but her voice carried clearly across the hushed crowd. "We're here because one of our own spoke up. Because Naomi Cross believed in doing what's right, even when it was dangerous." Mrs. Washington, who'd taught at the elementary school for 30 years, took hold of the other corner. "This isn't just about remembering. It's about witnessing, about making sure nothing stays hidden anymore." Together, they pulled the cloth away. Sunlight caught the polished bronze, making the words gleam. Naomi Cross witnessed. Remembered. Justice comes in full light. Children from the school where Naomi had worked stood quietly with their parents. Some held small bouquets of flowers, others simply watched with solemn eyes that had seen too much. A young girl stepped forward to lay a hand-drawn card beneath the plaque. Traffic cones were gradually moved aside, allowing cars to resume their normal flow. But drivers slowed naturally, perhaps sensing the weight of the moment. The crossing guard, Mr. Phillips, raised his sign with extra care as he guided the first group of students across the newly renamed intersection. Inside the courthouse downtown, Adia Renee Vargas stood before a bank of microphones, her usual cautious demeanor replaced by firm conviction. The federal investigation has revealed systematic abuse of power spanning multiple departments. Today, I can confirm that all charges against former Officer Holloway and his conspirators will proceed to trial. Additionally, the Department of Justice has implemented immediate oversight of our local law enforcement. She paused, allowing the announcement to settle. This isn't just about one traffic stop gone wrong. This is about years of coordinated intimidation, property theft, and civil rights violations. The evidence Ms. Cross collected, along with witness testimony, has exposed a criminal enterprise operating under the cover of authority. At the community center, Latar Malik Red and his team prepared to disperse. They moved with the same quiet efficiency that had marked their arrival, leaving no trace of their presence beyond the change they'd helped create. Devin Price secured the last of their equipment, while Isaiah Cole confirmed safe passage routes for remaining witnesses. "Mission complete," Malik said simply, exchanging a firm handshake with Elias. No dramatic speeches, no victory celebrations, just the satisfaction of professionals who'd executed their duty with precision. Hank Soder's news van idled nearby, his cameraman setting up for a live interview. The veteran reporter adjusted his tie, then nodded to Elias. "We're on in 3, 2. I'm here with Elias Cross," Soder began, whose wife's death sparked what many are calling a transformation in local law enforcement. "Mr. Cross, now that federal charges have been filed and the property scheme exposed, what comes next?" Elias stood straight, his composure unwavering. "Today, we're announcing the Naomi Cross Community Defense Fund. Using assets seized from the corrupt officials and developers, we'll provide legal protection for vulnerable homeowners. This was never about revenge. It was about ensuring no other family faces what we faced. Your wife's evidence proved crucial," Soder noted. "Did you know what she was documenting?" "Naomi believed in doing things in the open," Elias replied. "She kept records because she knew sunlight is the best disinfectant. The courage wasn't just hers, It belonged to every neighbor who filmed, every witness who spoke up, every person who refused to look away. Throughout the city, a collective exhale seemed to ripple through streets and neighborhoods. Outside the police station, officers who'd opposed the corruption privately now felt empowered to speak. In community meetings, residents began sharing stories they'd kept quiet for years. The weight of silence lifted, replaced by the harder but cleaner work of reform. The afternoon light softened as the crowd gradually dispersed from the intersection. Parents led children home, cars resumed their regular patterns, and the city's pulse found a new rhythm. There was grief in the air. There would always be grief where injustice had taken root, but something else flowed alongside it. Clarity. Purpose. The understanding that change, while painful, was possible. Marisol Vega paused by the plaque, touching it briefly before heading back to the school where her friend should have been. Mr. Phillips helped another group of students cross, his orange vest bright against the darkening sky. Lila Benton's live stream had ended, but her camera remained close, ready to record whatever came next. As shadows lengthened across the pavement, Elias stood alone before the memorial. His hand rested lightly on the warm metal, feeling the engraved letters beneath his fingers. The gas station's lights flickered on, and traffic moved steadily through the intersection where everything had changed. No sirens wailed, no shots rang out, just the ordinary sound of a community continuing forward, altered but unbroken, witnessed and remembered. The late afternoon sun stretched across the city, casting long shadows that couldn't hide anything anymore. Elias Cross stood at his kitchen window, watching the neighborhood children play basketball in the street, the same street where 30 Navy SEALs had stood their ground just weeks ago. The sound of bouncing balls and laughing voices replaced the memory of sirens and shouts. His phone buzzed with another news alert about Holloway. The former officer sat in federal custody now, facing a tower of charges that read like a textbook on abuse of power. Civil rights violations, conspiracy, obstruction of justice, and wrongful death. The prosecutors had added new charges yesterday after finding more evidence in the property scheme files. Elias picked up his coffee mug, one of Naomi's favorites, chipped but still useful, and walked onto his front porch. "Done." Washington waved from across the street as she tended her garden. Before all this, she'd been afraid to spend too much time outside, worried about patrol cars circling the block. Now she worked in her yard daily, proudly reclaiming her space. His phone lit up with a text from Renee Vargas. "Holloway's lawyers trying to deal. We're not interested. Trial dates set for next month." He replied with a simple thumbs-up emoji. Let them squirm. Let them face the sunshine they'd tried so hard to avoid. Down the block, Lila Benton was teaching her teenage son how to use a professional camera. She'd turned her impromptu live streaming into a citizen journalism program, training others to document their community with skill and purpose. The local news station had even hired her as a consultant. Hank Soder's latest article appeared in his news feed. Property seizure scheme unravels, more officials implicated. The veteran reporter had found his backbone, digging deeper into stories he'd once been afraid to touch. His coverage had sparked investigations in other cities, where similar patterns were emerging. A patrol car rolled past, one of the new officers, wearing the required body camera that never turned off. The driver nodded respectfully to Elias. The department's federal oversight had brought changes: transparent complaint procedures, community review boards with actual power, and the end of internal investigations. Sunlight had become policy. Devin Price had opened a self-defense center in the community hall, teaching residents how to protect themselves legally and effectively. His classes filled up instantly, especially the ones for women and seniors. Isaiah Cole sometimes helped, showing people how to document encounters safely while standing their ground. Walking down his front steps, Elias noticed fresh flowers at the base of the oak tree where Naomi used to read during summer afternoons. The neighbors kept the memorial alive without being asked, each small bouquet a reminder that the community's memory stayed strong. His phone buzzed again. A message from Lieutenant Malik read, "Anytime. Just one word, but it carried the weight of absolute certainty. If ever needed, 30 disciplined warriors would appear again, ready to stand in broad daylight for what was right." Elias smiled faintly as he deleted the message. The threat of their return would keep certain people honest far longer than any law. At the elementary school, Marisol Vega had taken over Naomi's counseling position. She'd expanded the program, helping kids understand their rights while teaching them about peaceful resistance. The children who'd witnessed Naomi's death were receiving special support, learning to transform their trauma into determination. The corner store owner, Mr. Rodriguez, waved as Elias passed. He'd installed better security cameras after everything happened, pointing them to cover not just his shop, but the entire intersection. Other businesses followed suit. The whole neighborhood had become a web of watching eyes, making sure nothing stayed hidden. A group of elderly residents sat in their usual spot outside the community center, playing chess and keeping track of everything. They'd been the first to spot the pattern of property harassment, but nobody had listened then. Now their observations were treated as valuable intelligence by federal investigators building cases against corrupt officials. The Naomi Cross Community Defense Fund had already helped 3 families fight off predatory developers. Each victory was public, documented, and widely shared. The old system of quiet pressure and midnight threats couldn't survive in the open air. Law firms were lining up to take cases pro bono, recognizing which way the wind was blowing. Court dates loomed on Elias's calendar, highlighted in bold. Unlike the quick private hearings that used to bury police misconduct, these would be public spectacles. Every detail would be examined under the harsh light of federal prosecution. Holloway's lawyers had tried to move the proceedings to a different city, claiming bias. The judge had denied their motion with a single sentence. Justice happens in the community where the crimes occurred. The street where the confrontation had erupted now felt different, reclaimed rather than feared. Children rode bikes past the spot where Devon Price had dropped that first aggressive officer. Neighbors held cookouts where riot police had once formed lines. The pavement remembered, but it no longer threatened. Elias paused at the intersection where it had all started. The gas station owner had painted his building, erasing the last visible scars of that day. But the memorial plaque still caught the sunlight, its message clear and unapologetic. A mother and child stopped to read it, the woman explaining quietly to her daughter why remembering mattered. The community had absorbed the lesson completely. Silence protected the wrong people. When a new officer was caught harassing teenagers last week, 5 different videos hit social media before his shift even ended. The department suspended him within hours. The system learned quickly when exposed to enough light. The sun continued its descent, stretching shadows across clean streets and quiet yards. But these weren't the shadows that hid corruption. They were simply nature's way of marking time, honest and predictable. Justice, once achieved, had no reason to hide. If you enjoyed the story, leave a like to support my channel and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. On the screen, I have picked 2 special stories just for you. Have a wonderful day.